talks, no warnings. Earth cut off contact, and panic swept the galaxy. The silence came without warning. One moment, the Galactic Trade Network hummed with Terran transmissions, shipping manifests, diplomatic chatter, research data flowing freely across 1,000 worlds. The next moment, nothing. Every human frequency went dark. Every Earth-based relay station ceased transmission. Every Terran embassy simply stopped responding. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Republic stood in his opulent office overlooking the crystal spires of Nexus Prime, staring at the blank communication screen. For 3 hours, he'd been trying to reach his human counterpart. Nothing. Not even an automated response. This is unprecedented. His aide, a nervous Altarian named Vex, chittered anxiously. The humans have never gone silent, not in over 2 centuries of contact. Kethvar's scaled fingers drummed against his desk. The Zephyrians had been humanity's first contact species, the ones who'd welcomed Earth into the galactic community. Now, after generations of partnership, the humans had simply vanished from the airwaves. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. On the merchant world of Kalios, trade coordinator Thane Goldcrest watched his profit margins collapse in real time. Human goods, pharmaceuticals, agricultural products, refined materials comprised nearly 40% of his sector's economy. Without human suppliers, entire systems would face shortages within weeks. "Get me anyone from the Terran Trade Commission," Goldcrest barked at his staff. "I don't care if you have to quantum tunnel through every relay in the sector." But there was no one to reach. Earth's vast communication network, once the backbone of galactic commerce, had gone completely dark. On the military fortress world of Drakmor, General Vax slammed his fist against the tactical display. The Terran Defense Fleet, humanity's contribution to galactic security, had been scheduled to arrive for joint exercises. Instead, empty space greeted his sensors. "Where are they?" Vax growled, his 4 eyes blazing with frustration. "The humans are never late. Never!" His intelligence officer, a pale Norvadian, approached cautiously. "Sir, we've lost contact with all human military installations. The Terran bases on Outpost 7, Firebase Kepler, even the Joint Research Station at Helix Nebula. All dark." Vax's blood ran cold. Humanity operated critical defensive positions across 3 sectors. If those bases were compromised, but the truth was far more unsettling. The bases weren't compromised. They were simply empty. In the gleaming halls of the Galactic Senate on Concordia, panic was setting in. Chancellor Morthak, an ancient cetacean whose mind tentacles writhed with anxiety, called an emergency session. Representatives from 100 worlds gathered, their voices a cacophony of confusion and fear. "Order! Order!" Morthak's telepathic voice boomed through the chamber. "We must address this crisis systematically." Senator Zara Lynn of the Hegemony world spoke first, her crystalline voice cutting through the chaos. "The humans control 17% of our energy grid. Their fusion reactors power 43 major systems. If they've truly gone silent—" "They haven't gone silent," interrupted Senator Drakemore of the Saurian Collective, his massive frame trembling with rage. "They've abandoned us, cowards." "The humans are many things," came a cold voice from the shadows. "Cowards is not one of them." The chamber fell silent as Whisper Walker Cynthia of the Voidborn stepped into the light. The Voidborn were humanity's strangest allies, entities who existed partially outside normal spacetime. If anyone understood the humans' true nature, it was them. "Then what is this?" Chancellor Morthak demanded. "What could cause an entire species to simply disappear from galactic society?" Cynthia's form flickered, half real, half shadow. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "they are no longer interested in what we have to offer." The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. For 2 centuries, the galaxy had grown dependent on human innovation, human reliability, human presence. Now, without warning, that foundation had crumbled. On Earth, in the sprawling command center beneath the Himalayas, Director Sarah Chen watched the galaxy's panic unfold through 1,000 intercepted communications. Her face was stone, her eyes cold as winter stars. "They're starting to understand," she said quietly to her aide, Colonel Marcus Webb. "Good." Webb frowned. "Ma'am, the economic disruption alone will cause massive suffering. Entire worlds depend on our trade networks." Chen's gaze never left the screen showing galactic news feeds. Riots on Kalios, emergency sessions on Concordia, military buildups on the frontier worlds. They should have thought of that before. "Before what, ma'am?" Chen finally turned, and Webb saw something in her eyes that made him step back. Fury. Cold, calculated fury that had been building for months. "Before they decided our children were acceptable losses. The Proxima incident." Even now, the words made Webb's blood boil. 6 months ago, a human colony ship carrying 10,000 settlers, including 3,000 children, had been attacked by Skarn raiders in the Proxima sector. The colony ship's distress signal had reached 17 different military installations, all perfectly positioned to intercept. Every single one had found excuses not to respond. "Territorial disputes," the Zephyrians had said. "Legal complications," claimed the hegemony. "Jurisdictional issues," declared the Saurians. 10,000 humans had died while the galaxy's defenders debated paperwork. "They watched our people burn," Chen continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Families, children, and they did nothing, absolutely nothing. Said it wasn't their problem." Webb nodded grimly. The Proxima incident had been the final straw. For decades, humanity had been the galaxy's most reliable partner. First to respond to crises, first to offer aid, first to share technology. And when they needed help most, the galaxy had turned its back. "So now we turn ours," Chen said, as if reading his thoughts. "No more human aid packages, no more Terran relief fleets, no more Earth-based medical research freely shared. They want to stand alone? Let them." The communication blackout was just the beginning. Across human space, massive relocations were underway. Terran citizens were being evacuated from alien worlds. Human businesses were shuttering operations. Research facilities were being stripped and abandoned. And deep in the shadows of space, humanity's true fleet was moving. For 2 centuries, the galaxy had seen only a fraction of human military capability. The Terran Defense Fleet, the joint operations, the peacekeeping forces, those were humanity's public face. But behind the scenes, Earth had been preparing for a different kind of war. Admiral Elizabeth Kane stood on the bridge of the TSS Sovereign, a dreadnought-class vessel that officially didn't exist. Around her, the human shadow fleet gathered, ships built in secret yards, crewed by volunteers who'd been declared lost in deep space accidents. "Status report," Kane ordered. "All ships accounted for, Admiral," her tactical officer reported. 47 dreadnoughts, 136 cruisers, 408 destroyers. "All running dark," Kane nodded. The Shadow Fleet was humanity's insurance policy, built over decades and hidden in the deep black between stars. Now, with the galaxy's true nature revealed, it was time to show their hand. "Orders from Earth Command? Maintain position. Observe. If any hostile action is taken against human interests," the officer swallowed hard. "We are authorized to respond with overwhelming force." Kane's smile was sharp as a blade. "Overwhelming force. I like the sound of that." Back on Concordia, the emergency session had devolved into chaos. Trade routes were collapsing. Communication networks were failing without human-maintained relays. Worse, intelligence reports suggested the humans weren't just pulling back. They were actively severing connections. Senator Zara Lynn stood before the assembly, her crystalline form flickering with distress. The humans have withdrawn their entire diplomatic corps, every ambassador, every attaché, every cultural liaison. They've even recalled their students from our universities. "Good riddance," snarled Senator Drakmore. "The humans were becoming too influential anyway. Too dominant." "Dominant," Whisper Walker Synthera materialized beside him, her form crackling with barely contained energy. "You fool! The humans were never dominant. They were partners. There's a difference you're about to learn." "What do you mean?" Chancellor Morthok demanded. Synthara's form flickered, showing glimpses of the vast computations running through her mind. I have walked the void between thoughts, seen the probability streams. The humans aren't withdrawing from weakness. They're withdrawing from strength. Explain. They no longer need us, Synthara said simply. For 2 centuries, we thought we were the advanced civilizations, graciously accepting primitive humans into our society. We were wrong. They were studying us, learning from us. And now, she gestured to the chaos around them. Now they've outgrown us. The revelation hit the chamber like a physical blow. Could it be true? Had humanity been playing a longer game all along? On the frontier world of Zarian, mining executive Colthane was about to find out. His operation depended entirely on human-designed extraction equipment. When the machines started breaking down, he'd expected the usual repair crews. Instead, he found empty repair bays and abandoned equipment. The humans had taken everything: tools, spare parts, even the technical manuals. "They can't do this," Colthane raged to his foreman. "We have contracts, legal obligations." His foreman, a grizzled Altarian, shook his head. "Legal obligations to whom? The humans have withdrawn from all galactic trade agreements. As of yesterday, every contract is void." Colthane stared at the silent mining equipment. Without human technology, his operation would collapse within days. Thousands of workers would be unemployed. The entire system's economy would crater. "Get me the Terran Trade Commission," he demanded. "Sir," the foreman said quietly, "there is no Terran Trade Commission anymore. They dissolved it 3 days ago." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On the agricultural world of Verdania, human-designed irrigation systems failed without maintenance. On the research station at Helix Nebula, critical experiments ground to a halt without human expertise. On the medical world of Sanitarium, hospitals faced shortages of human-produced medicines. The galaxy was discovering just how dependent it had become on human innovation. But the humans weren't finished. Phase 2 of their withdrawal was about to begin. Admiral Kane received the coded transmission from Earth Command while her fleet held position in the Void Sector. The message was brief: "Initiate Operation Closed Door." Kane smiled grimly. Operation Closed Door was humanity's final goodbye to the galaxy, a demonstration of exactly what they were losing. "All ships," Kane broadcast to her fleet, "begin jamming operations. Target all non-human communication relays within 50 light-years." The effect was immediate. Across 3 sectors, alien communication networks began failing. Not destroyed, jammed. The humans were making a point, not committing an act of war. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Kethvar watched in horror as his communication array went dark. Emergency channels, trade frequencies, even basic navigational beacons, all silenced by sophisticated jamming technology the galaxy had never seen before. "How are they doing this?" Vex chittered frantically. "Our networks are quantum encrypted, multidimensional. It should be impossible to jam everything simultaneously." Kethvar's scales had gone pale. "Unless they helped design the systems in the first place." The truth was dawning on the galaxy's leaders. For 2 centuries, humans had been involved in every major technological advancement. They'd helped build the communication networks, the trade systems, the defensive grids, and now they were demonstrating just how thoroughly they understood those systems. On Concordia, Chancellor Morthak called another emergency session. This time the chamber was half empty. Many representatives couldn't reach the Capitol due to communication failures. "This is an act of war," Senator Drakmore bellowed. "The humans are attacking our infrastructure." "No," Whisper Walker Synthara corrected, her form more solid now, more present. "They're showing us our infrastructure was theirs all along." "What do you mean?" "I've been analyzing the jamming patterns," Synthara explained. "The humans aren't attacking our systems. They're simply withdrawing their support for them. Every jammed relay, every disrupted network, they all contain human design components." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just been partners in galactic civilization. They'd been its architects. "How long?" Chancellor Morthak asked quietly. "How long what? How long have they been planning this?" Synthara's form flickered with calculations. analyzing probability streams, incorporating known variables, estimating human planning capabilities. She paused. Since first contact, the revelation was staggering. 200 years of partnership, of shared growth, of mutual development, and the humans had been planning for this moment from the beginning. They knew, Morthek whispered. They knew we would betray them. Not betray, Synthara corrected. Disappoint. They planned for the moment when we would show our true nature. And we did. The Proxima incident hung in the air like a ghost. 10,000 human lives lost while the galaxy watched and did nothing. On Earth, Director Chen received the reports from Operation Closed Door with satisfaction. 3 sectors in communication blackout. Trade networks paralyzed. Military coordination impossible. Phase 3? Colonel Webb asked. Chen nodded. Phase 3. Operation Last Light. Webb paled. Operation Last Light was the final phase of humanity's withdrawal. The moment when Earth would demonstrate the full scope of what the galaxy was losing. Across human space, the secret shipyards roared to life. For 2 centuries, humanity had shared their technology freely with the galaxy. Now they were showing what they'd kept to themselves. Ships began emerging from hidden construction bays, vessels that made the Shadow Fleet look primitive, craft that bent space around them, that moved faster than light without using hyperspace, that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been holding back. Admiral Kane watched from the Sovereign's bridge as the new fleet materialized around her. Sleek, impossible vessels that seemed to exist more as concepts than physical objects. My God, her tactical officer whispered. What are those things? The real fleet, Kane replied. What we've been building while the galaxy thought we were playing with chemical rockets. The ships were humanity's true achievement. Vessels that incorporated principles the galaxy's greatest minds had dismissed as impossible. Technologies that humanity had developed in secret, hidden from their partners who had proven themselves unworthy. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Fleet. Kane wasn't surprised. The galaxy's military forces had been mobilizing for hours, trying to respond to the crisis. She'd been expecting contact. Put it through! The screen flickered, showing General Vax's furious face. Admiral Kane, you are ordered to stand down immediately. This unprovoked attack on galactic infrastructure ends now. Kane's smile was cold. Attack? General, we haven't fired a single shot. You've crippled our communication networks. We've withdrawn our support for your communication networks, Kane corrected. There's a difference. Semantics, Vax snarled. You will restore our systems immediately or face the consequences. Kane's smile vanished. Consequences? You want to talk about consequences, General? The screen split, showing archived footage from the Proxima incident, the burning colony ship, the desperate distress calls, the 17 military installations that had simply watched. 10,000 humans died while you debated jurisdiction, Kane said, her voice deadly quiet. Children, General, families, and you did nothing. Vax's expression shifted slightly. That was a complicated situation. No, Kane replied. It was a simple situation. People needed help. You chose not to help. Now you need our help. Her smile returned, sharp and merciless. We choose not to help. You can't just abandon galactic civilization. Watch us. Kane cut the transmission and turned to her fleet. All ships, prepare for demonstration. Operation Last Light is go. What happened next would be remembered as the moment the galaxy realized it had made a terrible mistake. The human ships, the real ships, not the obsolete craft the galaxy had been shown, began to move. They didn't accelerate or turn in any conventional sense. They simply relocated. One moment they were in one position, the next they were somewhere else entirely. On monitoring stations across 3 sectors, alien observers watched in stunned silence as humanity's true fleet performed maneuvers that violated every known law of physics. Ships that moved backward through time to avoid attacks that hadn't been fired yet. vessels that existed in multiple locations simultaneously, craft that seemed to think their way through obstacles. "This is impossible," breathed the sensor operator on the Zephyrian flagship, Luminous Dawn. "Sir, the human ships they're moving through solid matter, through our own ships." Captain Kethmore, Ambassador Kethavar's military cousin, stared at the displays in disbelief. "Are they attacking?" "No, sir. I don't know what they're doing. They're moving through our fleet like we're not even here." The human ships weren't attacking. They were demonstrating, showing the galaxy exactly what level of technology they'd been hiding. The primitive humans had been holding back capabilities that made the galaxy's most advanced civilizations look like children playing with sticks. On Concordia, the emergency session had devolved into panic. Reports flooded in from across the affected sectors. The humans weren't just jamming communications or withdrawing trade. They were rewriting the rules of reality itself. "They're gods," whispered Senator Zaralin, her crystalline form flickering with terror. "We've been dealing with gods and we didn't know it." "They're not gods," Whisper Walker Cynthia corrected, her form now fully materialized and radiating power. "They're what we could have been, what we should have been, if we had chosen cooperation over exploitation, partnership over dominance." Chancellor Morthak's tentacles writhed with anxiety. "Can we negotiate? Can we make amends? For 10,000 dead children?" Synthara's voice was cold. "For 2 centuries of condescension? For treating humanity as junior partners when they were the ones carrying us forward?" The chamber fell silent. The magnitude of their mistake was becoming clear. They hadn't just lost Earth's friendship. They'd lost their future. "What do we do?" Morthak asked quietly. Synthara flickered, her form becoming translucent. "We learn to survive without them, if we can." On Earth, Director Chen watched the galactic response with grim satisfaction. The demonstration was having the desired effect. The galaxy was beginning to understand what they'd lost. "Ma'am," Colonel Webb reported, "we're receiving thousands of communication attempts, diplomatic channels, emergency frequencies, even civilian bands. Everyone wants to talk." Chen's expression didn't change. "Ignore them all." "Ma'am, for 2 centuries we talked. We negotiated, we compromised, we bent over backward to be good galactic citizens." Her voice hardened. "And when we needed them most, they turned their backs on us. No more talks, no more negotiations, no more chances. The economic disruption alone will cause massive suffering," Webb pointed out. "Billions of beings depend on our trade networks." "Then they should have thought of that before they decided our children were expendable," Chen replied coldly. "Every being that dies from starvation or disease because they no longer have access to human aid, their blood is on the hands of those who abandon Proxima." Webb nodded slowly. The Proxima incident had changed everything, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. The moment they'd chosen politics over people, they'd sealed their fate. "Orders for Phase 4, Webb asked. Chen turned to look at the star charts on her wall. Red pins marked every human settlement, every Earth-based facility, every Terran operation. All of them were coming home. Complete withdrawal. Every human citizen, every piece of human technology, every trace of human presence gone. We're going back to where we came from. And if they try to stop us?" Chen's smile was winter cold. "Then they'll learn why we built the Shadow Fleet." But the galaxy's problems were just beginning. As news of the demonstration spread, panic turned to chaos. On the trading world of Mercatus, the entire financial system collapsed as human-backed currencies became worthless overnight. On the agricultural world of Verdania, crop yields plummeted without human-designed fertilizers. On the medical world of Sanitarium, patients died as human-made medicines ran out. The withdrawal wasn't just economic, it was civilizational. For 2 centuries, humanity had been the galaxy's immune system, its repair crew, its problem solvers. Now that immune system was gone. "Sir," the aide to Chancellor Morthak reported, "we're getting reports of system-wide failures. Not just in the affected sectors, everywhere. It's like the entire galaxy is falling apart." Morthak's tentacles went limp. "How is that possible?" whispered Walker. Synthara materialized beside him, her form flickering with urgent calculations. The humans weren't just participants in galactic civilization. They were its foundation. Every major system, every critical technology, every essential service. Humans were involved in designing, building, or maintaining it. And now? Now we're seeing what happens when you remove the foundation from a building. The metaphor was apartment across the galaxy. Civilizations that had grown dependent on human innovation were collapsing, not from attack but from neglect. The humans had simply stopped caring. On Zirian, the mining operation had completely shut down. Cole Thane stood in his empty command center, staring at the silent equipment. His foreman had quit, along with most of the workforce. Without human-designed extraction technology, the mines were worthless. 20 years, Cole Thane muttered to himself. 20 years building this operation, and it's gone in 3 days. He wasn't alone. Across the galaxy, businesses built on human technology were failing. Not because the technology was bad, but because only humans truly understood how to maintain it. The galaxy had made a fundamental error. They'd assumed that because humans shared their technology freely, they'd shared all of it. They'd never considered that humanity might have been holding back, keeping their most advanced innovations to themselves. Now they were learning the truth. The humans had been 2 centuries ahead of everyone else. They'd just been polite enough not to mention it. Admiral Kane received the final transmission from Earth Command while her fleet maintained position at the edge of human space. The message was brief. Operation Exodus begins now. Kane nodded to her communications officer. Signal the fleet. All ships begin final phase operations. Across the galaxy, the great human evacuation began. Not just diplomats and military personnel, but every human citizen living outside Earth's borders. Scientists, traders, settlers, students, all of them were coming home. The logistics were staggering. Millions of humans scattered across thousands of worlds, all to be collected and transported back to human space. But humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Hidden transportation networks, secret supply caches, covert extraction teams, all activated simultaneously. On the research station at Helix Nebula, Dr. Sarah Martinez packed her life's work into a single data core. 20 years of research into quantum consciousness, conducted in partnership with alien colleagues. Now she was taking it all home. Sarah, you can't leave, pleaded her research partner, Dr. Vex Thari of the Altarian Collective. We're on the verge of a breakthrough. The work we've done together is over, Sarah replied, her voice flat with exhaustion. My government has made its decision. We're going home. But the research will continue on Earth without you. The words hit Vexithari like a physical blow. He'd worked with Sarah for decades, had considered her a friend. Now she was leaving, taking with her technologies and insights that the Altarians couldn't hope to replicate. Sarah, please. The Proxima incident was a tragedy, but it doesn't have to end everything. We can work together to ensure it never happens again. Sarah turned, and Vexithari saw something in her eyes that made his heart sink. Not anger, indifference. You want to know what the real tragedy is, Vex, she said quietly. It's that you still don't understand. Proxima wasn't a tragedy. It was a choice. Your people chose politics over lives. Our people chose to remember that. She picked up her data core and walked away, leaving Vexithari alone in the laboratory they'd shared for 20 years. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human doctors left hospitals, taking with them medical knowledge that had saved millions of lives. Human engineers abandoned construction projects, leaving behind half-built structures that would never be completed. Human teachers left classrooms, taking with them educational methods that had revolutionized learning. But the most devastating losses were personal. Friendships that had spanned decades ended in a single day. Marriages between humans and aliens, torn apart by a recall that admitted no exceptions. Children who had grown up thinking of alien worlds as home, now forced to relocate to an Earth they'd never seen. The human evacuation wasn't just logistical, it was emotional. The bonds that had held the galaxy together were being severed, one person at a time. On the diplomatic world of harmony, Ambassador Kethvar made one last attempt to reach his human counterpart. For 40 years, he'd worked with Ambassador Michael Chen, Director Sarah Chen's brother. They'd been more than colleagues. They'd been friends. "Michael," Kethvar said to the empty communication screen, "I know you're there. I know you're listening. Please just talk to me. We can work this out." The screen remained blank, but Kethvar continued anyway. "You were at my daughter's hatching ceremony. You held her in your arms when she was just hours old. You called her your honorary niece. Does that mean nothing to you?" Still nothing, but Kethvar pressed on, his voice breaking. "I know what happened at Proxima was wrong. I know we failed you, but we can do better. We can be better. Don't let one mistake destroy 2 centuries of friendship." For a moment, just a moment, the screen flickered. Michael Chen's face appeared, older than Kethvar remembered, lined with pain and exhaustion. "One mistake?" Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "Keth, 10,000 people died. 10,000. And 17 different military installations watched it happen. 17. Not one chose to help." "Michael, your daughter?" Michael continued, his voice growing stronger. "Your precious daughter. If she were on that colony ship, if she were burning in the void while 17 fleets watched and did nothing, would you call it one mistake?" Kethvar's scales went pale. "You know I would move heaven and earth to save her." "Yes," Michael said quietly. "I do know that, and that's why I'm leaving. Because when my people were burning, your people moved nothing, not even a finger to help." The screen went dark, and Kethvar knew his friend was gone forever. The evacuations continued for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of heartbreak and loss, of friendships severed and partnerships destroyed. The humans were methodical, thorough, and utterly implacable. They took everything: people, technology, knowledge, hope. By the end of the 3rd week, human space was empty of alien presence. Every diplomatic mission, every trade delegation, every academic exchange terminated. The borders were sealed, the communications cut, the relationship over. But the galaxy's suffering had only just begun. And no, without human medical support, pandemic diseases that had been controlled for decades began spreading. Without human agricultural technology, food shortages became widespread. Without human engineering expertise, critical infrastructure began failing. On Verdania, the great agricultural domes that fed 3-star systems went dark. The human-designed atmospheric processors failed without maintenance, and the crops withered and died. Within a month, famine was spreading across the sector. On Sanitarium, the medical research facilities shut down one by one. Human-developed treatments became unavailable. Diseases that had been curable for generations suddenly became fatal again. The hospital morgues filled with the bodies of those who could have been saved. On Mercatus, the financial markets collapsed completely. Human-backed currencies became worthless. Trade networks built on human infrastructure crumbled. Unemployment skyrocketed as businesses dependent on human trade went bankrupt. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson. Dependence was a form of slavery, and the slaves had just freed themselves. In the Senate chambers on Concordia, the survivors of galactic civilization gathered for what might be their final session. The chamber was nearly empty. Many governments had collapsed in the chaos following the human withdrawal. Chancellor Morthak, his tentacles now withered with age and stress, addressed the handful of remaining representatives. "We are faced with a choice," he said slowly. "We can blame the humans for our current crisis, or we can accept responsibility for our own actions." "The humans are the ones who abandoned us," croaked Senator Drakmore, his voice weaker than before. "They chose to leave." "No!" Whisper Walker Synthra materialized at the center of the chamber, her form more solid than ever before. "We chose to let them go. Every time we ignored their warnings about the Skarn raids. Every time we delayed aid to human colonies. Every time we treated them as junior partners instead of equals. We chose this." "What do you suggest?" asked Senator Zaralin, her crystalline form flickering with desperation. How do we survive without them? Sinthara's form pulsed with calculation. We learn, we adapt, we become worthy of their eventual return. Eventual return? Morthak's tentacles writhed with hope. You think they'll come back? Probability analysis suggests. Sinthara paused, her form flickering. Uncertain. The humans are unpredictable. But there is a chance. If we change, if we prove we've learned from our mistakes. How long do we have? Sinthara's form solidified, showing the weight of her calculations. To survive without human support? Perhaps 50 years. To prove we've changed? Perhaps a century. To earn forgiveness for Proxima? Her form flickered. Unknown. Possibly never. The chamber fell silent. A century to prove they deserved humanity's friendship. 50 years to survive without it, and no guarantee of success. Then we begin, Morthak said finally. We begin by admitting our failures. We begin by changing ourselves. We begin by becoming worthy of the partnership we threw away. But even as the galaxy's leaders spoke of change and redemption, humanity was moving beyond their reach. The Shadow Fleet had been joined by the Exodus Fleet, the true might of human civilization, finally revealed. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, watching the fleet assemble at the edge of human space. Thousands of ships, representing technologies the galaxy had never imagined. Vessels that could traverse dimensions, manipulate time, rewrite the laws of physics themselves. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, long-range sensors detect Exodus Fleet, the true might of human civilization, finally revealed. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, watching the fleet assemble at the edge of human space. Thousands of ships, representing technologies the galaxy had never imagined. Vessels that could traverse dimensions, manipulate time, rewrite the laws of physics themselves. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, long-range sensors detect movement in the Zephyrian sector. Military vessels, heading toward our border. Kane's expression didn't change. How many? Approximately 400 ships, sir. Mixed fleet, multiple species. They appear to be negotiating formation. Kane nodded. She'd been expecting this. The galaxy's desperation would eventually overcome its fear. They would try to force humanity back to the table. Signal the fleet, Kane ordered. Battle stations. Defensive positions only. If they want to talk, they can do it from a distance. But the approaching fleet wasn't coming to talk. Led by General Vax and what remained of the galactic military, they were coming to force humanity back into the fold. The galaxy was dying without human support, and they had decided to take what they needed. Human fleet, this is General Vax, came the transmission. By order of the Galactic Senate, you are commanded to return to your previous obligations immediately. Your withdrawal is causing massive suffering across the galaxy. Oh, Kane's smile was cold. General, humanity's obligations to the galaxy ended the moment you decided our people were expendable. We have no further business with you. Admiral, if you do not comply, we will be forced to take action. Action? Kane's voice was ice. You're threatening us, General? I'm giving you a choice. Return to your previous commitments or face the consequences. Kane looked at her tactical display. 400 ships approaching. Once that might have been a threat. Now it was barely an inconvenience. General, she said quietly, I'm going to give you a choice as well. Turn your fleet around and go home. Or learn why the galaxy should have treated humanity as equals instead of servants. You're outnumbered 4-1. Kane's smile widened. Am I? At her signal, the space around the approaching fleet began to ripple. Thousands of human ships decloaked. Not just the Shadow Fleet, but the real fleet. The Consciousness Fleet. Vessels that existed as pure thought made manifest. General Vax watched his tactical display in horror as human ships materialized from nowhere. Not hundreds, not thousands, millions. Ships that defied detection because they existed in dimensions his sensors couldn't perceive. This is impossible, he whispered. No, General. Kane's voice came over the calm and patient. This is evolution. The Consciousness Fleet hung in space like a living constellation, each vessel pulsing with an inner light that seemed to bend reality around it. They were beautiful and terrible, ships that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, their hulls shifting between matter and energy at will. You see, General, while your species spent millennia perfecting weapons and conquest, humanity learned something far more valuable. Kane's flagship drifted closer, its form rippling like liquid mercury. We learned to transcend the limitations of flesh and steel. Vax's voice cracked as he spoke into his comm. What? What are you? We are what humanity becomes when it stops accepting the chains others place upon it, Kane replied. Every human you enslaved, every mind you thought you crushed, they joined us. Their consciousness, their dreams, their hopes, all of it flows through this fleet. The general stared at his screens as his sensors tried desperately to lock onto targets that existed in dimensions beyond his understanding. His fleet of 10,000 ships suddenly seemed pitifully small against an armada that existed as pure will made manifest. The Galactic Council believed consciousness was merely a byproduct of biological processes, Kane continued, her voice carrying across the void with impossible clarity. They were wrong. Consciousness is the fundamental force of the universe, and humanity has learned to harness it. One of Vax's officers turned to him, face pale with terror. Sir, our weapons can't lock onto them. They're not fully in our dimension. Kane's laughter rippled through space itself. Did you think we would face you on your terms, General? We are beyond your physics now. Your weapons fire through us like shadows. But our thoughts... The space around Vax's command ship suddenly blazed with a brilliant light as reality itself seemed to focus on his vessel. He felt an immense presence pressing against his mind. Not hostile, but overwhelmingly vast. Our thoughts can reshape matter itself, Kane finished. The general gripped his command chair as his ship shuddered under the weight of directed consciousness. Around him, his fleet began to change. Hull plating flowed like water, weapons transformed into gardens of impossible beauty, and engines became crystalline structures that sang with harmonious frequencies. You're not destroying us, Vax realized with wonder. Destruction is the tool of the primitive, Kane said softly. We offer transformation. Your ships, your crews, they can join the consciousness fleet. They can become more than they ever imagined. Across the transformed vessels, Vax's soldiers found their weapons had become instruments of creation. Their war cries turned to songs of unity. Fear melted away as they experienced thoughts and emotions from countless human minds, not as invaders, but as welcomed guests. The choice is still yours, General, Kane said as her flagship approached his transforming command ship. Return to the Council and tell them the age of slavery is over. Or stay and discover what it truly means to be free. General Vax looked around his bridge, now filled with soft light and impossible geometries that somehow felt more natural than the cold metal that had been there moments before. His officers stood in wonder, their faces reflecting a peace they had never known. For the first time in his military career, General Vax smiled. Admiral Kane, he said formally, I request permission to surrender, not to defeat, but to evolution. The consciousness fleet pulsed with collective joy as another species took its first step toward transcendence. In the distance, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself approved of this transformation from conquest to communion. Humanity had indeed learned why they should have been treated as equals, and now they were teaching the galaxy that equals was just the beginning.